The scent of old paper and forgotten dreams always clung to Grandpa Alistair's study. It was a comforting smell, one that usually lulled me into a nostalgic haze. But tonight, it felt different. Tonight, it felt like a warning. I had always been close to Grandpa Alistair. He was a quiet man, a former Navy engineer from a generation that valued discretion. He rarely spoke of his time in the service, especially not about the war. All I knew was he served on a destroyer escort during WWI. He passed away peacefully last spring, leaving behind a house full of memories and, as I was about to discover, a monumental secret. His will was simple enough. To my grandson Mark, I leave my entire library and personal effects. Look closely, Mark. The truth is often hidden in plain sight. Cryptic words from a cryptic man. I spent weeks sorting through his belongings, mostly old books and tools. Nothing that screamed secret, until I found the lockbox. It was tucked away behind a loose brick in the fireplace. A heavy, tarnished brass box secured with a combination lock. A note taped to it in Grandpa's shaky handwriting simply read, "From Mark, when you're ready. Don't tell a soul." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Ready for what, Grandpa?" I whispered to the empty room. After a few tense minutes, I remembered his old Navy service number, 21473. Could it be? I tried it. Click. The tumblers fell into place with a soft thud that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed photographs of a young, stern-faced Grandpa Alistair in his Navy uniform, was a stack of leather-bound journals. They weren't official logs. These were personal diaries filled with intricate technical drawings, coded notes, and a narrative that began in 1943. And the first words I read sent a shiver down my spine. October 28th, 1943. Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. They said it would change warfare. They were right. It changed everything. My hands trembled as I turned the brittle pages. Grandpa Alistair wasn't just observing, he was involved. The journals meticulously documented his perspective as a junior engineer on the USS Eldridge, right there in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. He wrote about the palpable tension in the air, the hushed conversations among the senior officers, and the unnerving secrecy that permeated every aspect of Project Rainbow. They called it Project Rainbow, a euphemism I now realized, for something far beyond conventional warfare. He described the massive generators brought onto the dock, humming with an almost sentient energy. The intricate web of cables snaking across the ship's deck, connecting to what looked like colossal electromagnetic coils. The scientific team, led by Dr. Franklin Reno, a name that sent a jolt through me, having vaguely heard it in hushed conspiracy circles, moved with an urgency that bordered on fanaticism. They spoke in tongues of quantum mechanics, electromagnetic fields, and theoretical physics that were decades ahead of their time. My grandfather, with his sharp engineering mind, understood enough to be both awed and deeply, deeply unsettled. October 28th, 1943, he wrote, his penmanship becoming more frantic in that entry. The air was thick with static, a smell like ozone and fear. Orders were given, men scurried, and then the generators engaged. The hum intensified, vibrating through the very soles of my boots. A greenish-blue mist began to coalesce around the Eldridge, shimmering, distorting the air. It wasn't fog, it was something else, something unnatural. The ship started to disappear, not slowly, like it was sinking, but fading. First the masts, then the deck, then the hull. The outlines blurred, rippled like water, and then nothing. The USS Eldridge, with its full crew, was gone, just an empty patch of water where a destroyer escort had been moments earlier. I could almost hear the silence that must have fallen over the shipyard, broken only by the distant squawking of gulls. But then, an even more disturbing entry followed. A few minutes later, it reappeared, but it wasn't the same. Men were screaming. Some were fused into the bulkheads, others burning, some simply gone. And then there were those who were completely disoriented, their minds shattered. They called it a success. They called it invisibility. But I saw the horror. I saw the human cost. And I knew, deep down, that something else had happened. Something they weren't telling us. Something beyond simple invisibility.
The subsequent journal entries were filled with a grim, almost conspiratorial tone. Grandpa Alistair recounted the immediate aftermath of the experiment with a chilling clarity. The official story, quickly concocted and disseminated, spoke of equipment malfunction, a tragic accident, and nothing more. But his first-hand account painted a vastly different, more terrifying picture. He wrote of the rapid deployment of military police, the forced silence of witnesses, and the frantic efforts to clean up the scene. Not just the physical evidence, but the minds of those who had seen too much. He detailed the debriefings, which felt more like interrogations. Every sailor, every engineer, every dock worker who had even glimpsed the Eldridge's bizarre disappearance and reappearance was put through a rigorous process of questioning, psychological evaluation, and, subtly, re-education. Grandpa noted how certain individuals, particularly those who spoke of lights or things moving in the mist, were quietly transferred, never to be seen again by their former comrades. The message was clear. What happened that day was not to be spoken of, not a word. But what truly haunted him, what he meticulously scribbled in the margins of his technical drawings, were the whispers, the terrified, incoherent ramblings of some of the surviving crew members who had not been entirely re-educated. One man, a petty officer named Miller, was found muttering about the cold light from below and eyes in the deep. Another, Ensign Hayes, kept drawing intricate geometric patterns he claimed to have seen during the ship's momentary vanishing act, patterns that looked nothing like human design. My grandfather, being an engineer, initially dismissed these as post-traumatic hallucinations, the mind grappling with the incomprehensible. Yet a seed of doubt was planted, especially after he stumbled upon Dr. Reno's personal notes, a forbidden peek he regretted but couldn't unsee. Tucked inside a discarded file, these notes weren't about invisibility, they were about displacement, about a theoretical tear in the fabric of space-time that might open briefly to other dimensions or other locations, and scrawled almost illegibly at the bottom, a single unsettling question: did we bring something back, or did something follow us? The implication was staggering. The Eldridge hadn't just moved from one point to another, it had touched something else, something beyond. Grandpa Alistair's engineering brain, trained in logic and observable facts, was now forced to confront the impossible. His life, he realized, would never be the same. He carried this burden, this chilling knowledge for decades, buried deep within his soul, only now, through these journals, entrusting it to me. Reading those pages, I felt a connection to my grandfather I'd never experienced in life. He wasn't just a quiet old man. He was a silent sentinel, guarding a truth too profound and dangerous for the world. His journals became my obsession, each night drawing me deeper into the rabbit hole he had meticulously, agonizingly dug over the decades. I devoured every word, every sketch, every coded message. He had developed his own cipher for certain sensitive details, a complex substitution based on nautical flags and Morse code that took me days to unravel, poring over old Navy manuals I found hidden in his attic. It was in these coded sections that the true depth of his fear and his subsequent investigation became apparent. After the Philadelphia experiment, Grandpa Alistair wasn't just silent, but he was vigilant. He saw shadows where there were none, heard whispers in the static of old radios. He never spoke of what happened, not even to Grandma, protecting her from the monstrous truth he now carried. But he never stopped searching. He began collecting newspaper clippings about inexplicable maritime disappearances, unusual seismic activity along coastlines, and strange luminous phenomena reported by sailors and fishermen, reports that were often quickly dismissed or rationalized by authorities. He meticulously cross-referenced these incidents with naval records, shipping routes, and even old folklore about sea monsters and phantom ships. He wasn't looking for proof of the Eldridge's exact fate, but for patterns, for connections. He suspected, no, he knew that the experiment had opened a door and something had either slipped through or had always been there, but now had a clear path to interact with our world. His paranoia wasn't unfounded, it was informed. He believed the government was aware, perhaps even complicit, in a deeper secret, but their primary goal was containment and denial. One particular section of the journal, written in 1972, chilled me to the bone. It spoke of a series of sonar anomalies detected off the coast of Florida, massive, structured objects moving with impossible speed beneath the deepest trenches. Not submarines, he scrawled, not natural formations, these are constructions, and they are vast. He included crude sonar readings and hand-drawn topographical maps of the ocean floor, marking points where these constructions seemed to cluster. He theorized that the Eldridge's jump hadn't just teleported it, it had briefly phased it into a hidden domain, an unseen layer of our own world where these entities resided, and they had taken notice. The Eldridge was a momentary violent intrusion into their ancient silent realm, and it had left a mark.
The more I read, the more the lines between my mundane reality and Grandpa Alastair's incredible saga began to blur. His meticulous research wasn't just abstract theorizing, it was a decades-long pursuit of an elusive truth, a personal mission to understand the ramifications of that fateful day in 1943. He had meticulously documented reports of unexplained lights in the sky that entered the ocean or emerged from it. He collected stories from remote coastal communities of strange phosphorescent glows deep beneath the waves, or of odd resonant hums emanating from the sea on calm nights. Sounds that caused animals to panic and people to feel an inexplicable dread. One particular collection of entries focused on the coastline of North Carolina, near the infamous Graveyard of the Atlantic, where countless ships have met their end. Grandpa hypothesized that this area, with its deep trenches and turbulent currents, might be a kind of nexus or a preferred entry point for these hidden entities. He spoke of peculiar magnetic anomalies and gravitational fluctuations reported by fishing vessels in specific zones, anomalies that defied conventional explanation. These weren't isolated incidents, they formed a disturbing tapestry, weaving together seemingly unrelated events into a cohesive, terrifying narrative. He wrote about his own discreet visits to these coastal towns in the 1980s, posing as a retired naval historian. He'd spend weeks, sometimes months, just listening to the local legends, sifting through hushed whispers in dimly lit taverns, and talking to old, salt-of-the-earth fishermen who had seen things they couldn't explain. He described an old Gullah woman on a remote barrier island who spoke of starfish people who lived in cities of light beneath the water and who sometimes pawed to the storms. Her stories, initially dismissed by Grandpa as quaint folklore, took on a chilling new significance as he correlated them with his scientific observations. "They are here," he had scrawled in bold, shaky letters on one page. "They are ancient, and they are watching us." The Eldridge incident wasn't just a glimpse into their world, but an alarm bell for them. They know we have the capability, however clumsy, to breach the veil, and they are reacting. His last entries were a desperate plea, almost a warning to me, though he couldn't have known who would read them. Don't let them forget. Don't
let them be forgotten. The oceans hold more than just secrets. They hold entire civilizations, and humanity is blissfully, dangerously unaware. Grandpa Alistair's journals had done more than just inform me. They had transformed me. What began as a morbid curiosity quickly spiraled into an all-consuming obsession. His plea, "Don't let them forget," echoed in my mind, a sacred trust passed down through generations. I couldn't just close the journals and return to my ordinary life. The weight of this secret was too immense. The world as I knew it had fundamentally shifted. Every ripple on the ocean, every distant ship on the horizon, every unexplained news report about a missing vessel or a strange deep-sea phenomenon now held a terrifying new meaning. My own life, once focused on mundane daily routines, began to revolve around his research. I spent countless hours in public libraries, cross-referencing his findings with declassified government documents, old scientific papers, and obscure maritime archives. I even learned to distinguish between genuine deep-sea seismic activity and the anomalous, structured vibrations Grandpa had noted. The sheer scale of his hidden work was astounding. He had built a mosaic of evidence, piece by painstaking piece, over half a century. The most unnerving aspect was the chilling consistency of the patterns. Reports of fast-moving underwater objects, often described as disc-shaped or cigar-shaped, capable of impossible maneuvers and speeds, spiked dramatically after 1943. These weren't just isolated sightings, they were global, yet always clustered around deep oceanic trenches or known geothermal vents. It was as if certain areas of the seabed were portals, gateways to another realm, and the entities from this realm, after the Eldridge incident, were no longer as cautious as before. They were making their presence felt. There was one particularly disturbing entry from 1998, just a few years before Grandpa passed. He described a personal incident. "Felt a tremor in the house tonight, not an earthquake. A low-frequency hum vibrated through the floorboards. Went outside, the air was still, but the ocean, 3 miles away, was alive with a strange energy. A faint light pulsed deep in the sky, far out over the water, then slowly descended, vanishing beneath the waves. It wasn't human. It wasn't ours. It was a communication or a rendezvous. They are here. They are organized, and they are operating with an agenda we cannot yet comprehend."
The more I delved into Grandpa Alistair's world, the more convinced I became that his work wasn't merely a record of past events. It was a roadmap, a desperate plea for me to continue his search. He hadn't just collected data, he had painstakingly analyzed it, seeking patterns, deciphering anomalies. His final, most disturbing revelation wasn't a piece of text, but a complex, hand-drawn map tucked into the very last journal. It was a nautical chart of the North Atlantic, intricately marked with a series of coordinates that circled a vast, unexplored region of the deep ocean, a place known for its crushing depths and enigmatic silence. These coordinates weren't random. They corresponded precisely with the clusters of unexplained magnetic anomalies, the deep-sea hums, and the disappearance sites he had so meticulously documented. But more chillingly, overlaid onto these coordinates were faint geometric symbols, almost alien in their design, that resembled the patterns Ensign Hayes had scribbled after the Eldridge incident. It was as if Grandpa had pieced together the incoherent ramblings of a traumatized sailor with decades of scientific observation, forming a terrifyingly coherent picture. He called this region the Nexus. A faded, coffee-stained note was pinned to the map. "Mark, if you're reading this, it means you've embraced the truth. They are not coming. They are already here. They have been for millennia." The Eldridge merely disturbed their peace. The Philadelphia experiment was a misdirection. The true purpose was to understand their technology, to weaponize it, but we barely scratched the surface. The invisibility wasn't what they thought. It was a brief, terrifying glimpse into their realm. And in that moment, we were seen. Now, they are responding. The anomalies are not just sightings. They are probes, communications, preparations. Find the nexus. But beware, my boy. This knowledge is a heavy burden, and the truth has teeth. My grandfather, in his quiet way, hadn't just left me a collection of secrets. He had left me a legacy of responsibility. He believed that the continuous escalation of naval sonar testing, deep-sea drilling, and exploration was pushing these hidden civilizations to their breaking point. He feared a confrontation, not with us, but from them, an ancient, technologically superior race disturbed from their long slumber, or perhaps their patient observation. The thought sent a jolt of icy dread through me. Was I meant to be a silent observer like him, or was I meant to act? What could one man do against a secret so vast, so deeply ingrained in the very fabric of our oceans? The map, with its cryptic symbols and unsettling coordinates, burned in my mind. It was no longer just an academic pursuit, it was a call to action. Grandpa Alistair hadn't just observed the unfolding mystery, he had set a course for me to follow. The Nexus, as he called it, was located off the coast of North Carolina in a region known for its deep oceanic trenches and powerful, unpredictable currents, a place where the Atlantic swallowed ships whole and held its secrets close. It was a place I knew I had to go. The decision wasn't made lightly. A part of me screamed against the irrationality of it all. This was the stuff of science fiction, of late-night talk shows and fringe documentaries. Yet the meticulous detail in Grandpa's journals, the chilling consistency of his cross-reference data, and the raw, unvarnished fear in his later entries grounded it in a horrifying reality. How could I ignore it? How could I turn my back on a truth he had sacrificed his life's peace to uncover? I began making preparations, discreetly at first. I liquidated a small portion of my savings, enough to fund a trip to the Carolina coast and charter a small, private fishing vessel. I knew I couldn't trust anyone with the full story. The risk of being dismissed as delusional, or worse, drawing unwanted attention from the very agencies Grandpa had alluded to, was too great. I fabricated a cover story, a personal photography project, a desire to capture the rugged beauty of the Outer Banks, maybe a bit of deep-sea fishing. As I packed, I included not just clothes and camera gear, but also the most crucial elements from Grandpa's legacy: photocopies of the Nexus map, key journal entries detailing the electromagnetic anomalies, and a compact, portable sonar device I'd managed to acquire. A far cry from the sophisticated equipment the Navy possessed, but hopefully enough to detect something. The weight of Grandpa's brass lockbox, now containing only the original journals, felt heavier than ever. It was no longer just a box of secrets. It was Pandora's box, and I was about to pry it open further. Driving south along the coastal highways, the familiar scenery felt alien. Every passing lighthouse, every distant glimmer of the ocean, every fishing boat returning with its day's catch took on a new, ominous significance. I wasn't just heading to a vacation spot. I was journeying into the unknown, chasing the whispers of an old man's lifetime obsession, convinced that beneath the waves, an ancient alien presence was waiting for me, or perhaps waiting for us all.
The small fishing town of Oakhaven was exactly as Grandpa Alistair had described in his journals: weathered, resilient, and steeped in maritime lore. The air tasted of salt and distant storms, and the incessant cry of gulls seemed to carry secrets on the wind. I managed to charter a modest vessel, the Sea Serpent, from a grizzled old fisherman named Silas. He had eyes that had seen too many sunrises and too many strange things that the ocean sometimes coughs up. My cover story about photography and unique deep-sea fishing opportunities seemed to appease his curiosity, though a flicker of knowing suspicion always lingered in his gaze. Our first few days out were uneventful, a deliberate choice on my part to establish a routine to lull Silas into a false sense of normalcy. We fished, we watched the horizon, and I took countless mundane photographs. But each night, in the solitude of my rented cabin, I meticulously reviewed Grandpa's map, tracing the coordinates of the nexus, feeling an electric current of anticipation and dread. The designated area was further out than Silas usually ventured, into waters known for their treacherous currents and sudden violent storms. On the fourth morning, I finally directed Silas towards the first set of coordinates. The change was subtle at first. The water, usually a vibrant cerulean, took on a deeper, almost inky hue, reflecting less light, hinting at unfathomable depths beneath. The air grew strangely still, the usual coastal breeze dying down to an unnerving calm. Even the gulls seemed to have abandoned us, leaving only the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull and the hum of the boat's engine. It felt like we were entering a different world, a zone where nature held its breath. Then, my portable sonar, which I had discreetly deployed, began to register anomalies. Faint pings at first, barely discernible against the background noise of the ocean, but growing steadily more pronounced. They weren't fish schools nor geological formations. These were patterns, regular rhythmic pulses emanating from the abyss below, moving with an impossible speed and precision. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the deep, silent thrum I now felt permeating the very structure of the boat. It wasn't just the sonar, I could feel it, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to resonate in my bones, a sensation Grandpa had described in his journal, a hum that vibrates through the floorboards. Silas, leaning against the helm, frowned. "Water's actin' strange today, son," he grumbled, his voice low. "Currents are off, and my old fish finder's picking up nothing I recognize, like ghost echoes." He peered at the sonar screen, then out at the unnervingly calm, dark water. "Never seen anything quite like it. Feels like the ocean itself is holding its breath." He didn't know how right he was. We weren't just fishing in strange waters. We were sailing over the threshold of an ancient, terrifying secret. The ghost echoes on my sonar grew stronger, morphing from vague blips into distinct, almost geometric shapes moving with an intelligence that defied any known marine life or submarine technology. Silas grew increasingly uneasy, glancing between his own malfunctioning equipment and the unnervingly stillness of the water. "Mark, I think we've gone far enough," he finally said, his voice laced with a tremor I hadn't heard before. "This ain't right. My compass is spinning, and I'm feeling a pull, like the whole ocean's trying to drag us down." But I couldn't turn back. Not now. Not after all Grandpa Alistair's work, not after coming this far. The hum in my bones intensified, morphing into a low resonant frequency that seemed to bypass my ears and directly vibrate within my skull. It felt like a song, ancient and powerful, beckoning me deeper. I consulted Grandpa's map, comparing the sonar readings to his cryptic markings. We were directly over the nexus. Then it happened. Not with a splash or a roar, but with an impossible, silent emergence. The water directly ahead of us began to glow from beneath, a soft, pulsating, phosphorescent light, growing in intensity. It wasn't just a surface phenomenon. The light seemed to emanate from hundreds of feet below, pushing through the crushing darkness of the abyss. Silas gasped, his jaw slack, pointing with a trembling hand. From the heart of that light, a colossal, impossibly sleek shape began to rise. It wasn't a ship, not a submarine, and certainly not natural. It was an immense, dark, triangular craft, its surface impossibly smooth and seamless, absorbing rather than reflecting the light around it. It moved with a serene, effortless grace that defied the laws of physics, shedding water without a single ripple. No visible propulsion, no windows, no discernible markings. It was pure alien architecture,
a monument to a technology thousands of years beyond our comprehension. As it broke the surface, hovering silently just feet from our boat, the humming stopped. A new sound filled the air, not audible, but felt, a symphony of frequencies that resonated directly in my mind. It was a communication, a silent, overwhelming download of information, images, and raw, profound emotion. I saw glimpses of vast, luminous cities beneath the deepest trenches, of beings that were graceful and wise, living in perfect harmony with the ocean's unforgiving embrace. I saw their history, their long, patient observation of humanity, their understanding of our destructive tendencies, and their growing concern. Then, a single piercing thought, not in words, but in pure concept, flooded my mind. You have found us. You have been chosen to know. Your ancestor knew. Tell your world what truly lies beneath the waves. The time of hiding is ending. As quickly as it appeared, the colossal craft began to descend, the phosphorescent glow receding with it, pulling the impossible truth back into the inky depths. The hum faded. The ocean returned to its eerie calm. Silas, pale and shaking, stared at me, his eyes wide with a terror that mirrored my own awe. He said nothing, but his gaze was clear. He had seen it too. I looked down at Grandpa Alistair's journal, its pages now feeling impossibly light, its secrets finally unleashed. My journey had just begun. The whispers of the deep were no longer just whispers. They were a thunderous roar, echoing a truth that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe forever. And I, Mark, was now its reluctant, terrified messenger.